Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to SolarShare's 2024 Annual General Meeting. I'm pleased to have you. My name is Chris Caners. I'm the General Manager of SolarShare. I hope you had a chance to check out our quiz, which you can win a cool solar panel charging station. So please check that out. We'll close it at 8 o'clock. Okay. Welcome, and let's get right into it. Before we begin, we wanted to acknowledge that Ontario is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And in fact, SolarShare's office is located on the traditional territory of the Huron, Wendat, Petun First Nations, and the Seneca and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Our projects are located on the traditional and unceded territories of many Anishinaabe First Nations, including the Ottawa, Algonquin, Ojibwe, Mississaugas of the Credit, and Saugeen First Nations. We are grateful for the opportunities provided by these lands that host our solar projects and allow us to live, work, and gather together. In addition, we want to acknowledge that we have more to learn. We would like to express our intention at this time to better educate ourselves about the peoples, territories, and treaties on which our projects operate. As we learn, we commit to sharing that knowledge with our members and the public. We welcome your participation in our AGM and look forward to it. You can see the documents that support the AGM, such as the 2023 draft minutes and the program, as well as our audited financials at the link shown there. And again, you can use that QR code. You'll see the QR codes throughout the presentation. And once again, you just need to hold your phone camera up like you're taking a picture of it, and a link will show up, and you can click on that link to take you where it's giving you the link for. Please use the Zoom toolbar if you want to ask any questions or if you want to raise your hand. What we'll do is, at the end of each section, if you wish to ask a question verbally, then use the raise hand function, and my colleague Bob will happily unmute you and you can ask your question. You can also use the Q&A function and just type an answer in there, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go through the presentation, sometimes verbally and sometimes we'll write the answer. Just keep in mind that only members can vote when it comes to polling. Okay, the chat function, by the way, is also enabled. So if you wish to use the chat function, you can. Thanks, Marina. You'll see that we'll post some of the links in the chat there that we're speaking about. Once again, our contest, I just mentioned it. Please try it. We think it's pretty fun. And you can win this nifty solar panel. Okay, so I'm pleased to call this meeting to order. The board has asked me to act as the presiding officer for this meeting. We do have the 25 members required for quorum. The meeting is being recorded, as you probably heard. We're doing a recording of the actual meeting on video and audio, as well. Our colleague Mary Warner is taking notes as the recording secretary. So at this time, I'd like to seek approval of the 2023 AGM minutes, which are available in draft form on that link that we just showed you. Just keep in mind, only those members present at the 2023 AGM are eligible to vote on this particular polling item. So I would like to ask Mike, could you move to approve the 2023 AGM minutes?
Thanks, Chris. I so move.
Thank you. And
Patrick, second.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Any discussion before we launch that poll? I don't see any. So I'll go ahead and launch that poll. And you should be able to see the voting on your screen. Thank you, everyone. I'll give you a few more seconds. Great. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And you can see that the motion has been approved. Thank you. So now I would like to show you a little bit about our agenda. So we're basically on time here. So next you're going to hear from our president, Mike Brigham. Then we'll talk through the audited financials with Ashley Reed, the chair of our audit committee. Then Doug Finley will tell us more about finance. We'll do the election of directors to the board. And then we'll hear from Patrick Collie and Peter DeConing on new business and sales and marketing before we end the meeting. And we will have time at the end for more questions. If we don't get to all of them during the presentations, we'll see how that goes and do our best to, if we don't get to your question during the meeting, then we will do our best to get to it afterwards. Okay. Before we get to the president's report, I just want to say thank you to our board of directors. SolarShare, I think, is stronger because of the people around it. We know that good organizations take good people, and I think that's what we have at SolarShare. So I'm very pleased that we have such a fantastic board and who work very hard on behalf of the members. Our committee members are also really great and give a lot of time and expertise to the work that we do. So we really appreciate their help as well. We have one new finance committee member, Mark Penny. Welcome to the finance committee, Mark. We are talking to other folks about joining the committees. If you do want to join the committee, please reach out. You can call me at SolarShare, or you can reach out to Chris at solarbonds.ca, and we're happy to talk and see how you might be able to contribute to SolarShare. Finally, we, of course, wouldn't be able to do what we do without our fantastic staff. Bob Ross, our operations and maintenance coordinator, does a great job running our facilities and putting a lot of work and dedication to that. Also, our maintenance technicians listed here. Welcome to Randall and Rick, who are new to our team. These folks really make our systems run and are responsible for the success of SolarShare's production. So it's really great. I also want to mention Noah and Adam, who are both interns with SolarShare this year. And we're really pleased to have them. And hopefully you'll meet them, Noah in particular, at some of the farmers markets we're planning on going to later this summer. Oh, and one more thing, I would be remiss to not mention Tapestry Community Capital and Trek. Both organizations allow SolarShare to thrive and do the work that we do. I encourage you to check out both of them. And Tapestry is doing really great things with community bonds and other parts of our economy. Okay, without further ado, I'd love to welcome our president, Mike Brigham.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And welcome everybody to tonight's presentation. I'd like to report that basically the operations, the finance, the accounting, the administration of SolarShare all have worked for a number of years now, like a well-oiled machine. I think basically we just get better at what we do every year. There have been notable improvements in a number of areas. The board of directors has been focusing on trimming unnecessary costs where possible, and we've been working with Mary and team at Trek and Tapestry to do that over the past 2 years and made significant strides. The board has been very pleased with what we've done. Chris has also cooperated in helping to do everything that he can make possible to minimize our costs as much as possible while not affecting the quality of what we do. The real challenges that we face are the operations and maintenance of the systems. And so I'll transition right into switching my hats to the head of the Operations and Maintenance Committee. Slide. To discuss the year 2023, as you would obviously know, the amount of power we produce and the revenues we earn are governed by basically two factors. And one of them is just the amount of solar insolation, or the amount of solar exposure our systems receive, and how much of that we can effectively translate to power that is, affected by, electrical or mechanical problems. In 2023, we had not a great year for generation. The spring offered us some extremely low generation months, as can often happen. And when you get three of them in a row that are bad, that's that's a bad start to the year. To compound that, during the year, you may recall we had forest fire smoke, and although the sun might have been out, it just didn't shine as brightly, and the systems just weren't making as much money. On top of that, we had a couple of systems that had particular problems that we were working to overcome, and it took us longer than we would have hoped to overcome them, in many cases due to complexity or lack of supplier parts or warranty, which I'll get into a little bit more next slide. The wildfire smoke is not really news to anybody, so I really won't go into detail about that. I think it's pretty self-improvement. We are better off by 3%, which is notable this year so far, and we're hoping that we're going to have a bright summer and make the best of our system resources. Slide. To give you some appreciation as to some of the challenges that we face, I'm going to just go into a couple of examples and sort of tell you, sort of what we face. One of our newer projects is our Renfrew project, which is up in northeastern Ontario. This project has 51 large trackers. As you can see here, you can't tell the scale, but these have 35 pretty large panels on them. And we purchased this from another cooperative, and knew that we would have to spend money fixing it up. There were a number of aspects of it that we determined in our due diligence that weren't what we wanted to see. Slide. What we did experience, though, on many days, during the winter into 2023 and 2024, was a syndrome that Bob Ross, our manager of operations and maintenance, calls drunken tracker syndrome, because of course the sun can only be in one place in the sky at one time. The trackers, as you can see them here, are doing everything from facing straight up into the sky to facing east, to facing so low in the east that they're aiming at the forest trees, and every angle in between. This isn't optimal, and it's something that we knew that we were going to fine tune, but the situation became much worse than we would have anticipated. These trackers are all trying to focus on the sun by what's called optical tracking, and that is to say basically that each one looks for the brightest spot in the sky and aims the tracker at it, which sounds good in practice, or good in theory rather, but didn't work out in practice. And of course, if a tracker is not aiming at the brightest part in the sky, we're missing a significant amount of tracker revenue, and this system was performing very poorly. We spoke to the very experienced maintainer of the site, the professional maintenance service. They proposed a solution, which we gave them a year to provide, even though they quoted 4 months. They still hadn't, and we said, this is just not acceptable. We've got to move on to find somebody else who can make this happen. Slide. There was many meetings and many discussions in the interim, but we did find a man in the Muskoka region who was very experienced with robotics and automated control systems. He worked on everything from hospital equipment to a number of other applications. It turned out he developed proprietary tracking software that offered a number of advantages that the manufacturer's tracking did not. We had extensive discussions with him, and we ended up deciding to deploy his control system, which is this electronics card plus software, on each of the 51 trackers to try to improve the performance. I will tell you there was quite a bit of due diligence and meetings on this and vetting this because it was not a technology which many people had deployed. Slide. So we came to an agreement at a cost of $140,000, which I was able to persuade the board to part with this much money, knowing that we had to see significant improvements in this project. And as with different technologies from other projects that we have, the situation was the manufacturer could not or would not provide us with an adequate remedy to the problem that we saw, the problem that we needed to have addressed. And in many of these cases, we've had to go into very much unexplored territory to find solutions to it. And we had to be pretty innovative in a number of areas. Slide. When the upgrades to the system were being worked on, and these are just about complete now. These control systems were put in, the software was implemented, communications protocols were established, and while they were there, they got to take some close-up looks at some of the mechanisms. You can see the vertical shaft that is behind the gentleman with the beige breaker. This is called a linear actuator, and this particular one raises and lowers the panel, the aim of the panel. We were having problems with a number of panels, a number of trackers being unresponsive. And so while they were doing this, we asked them to take an examination of each one and report back to us. Slide. We found out that despite using all the manufacturer's parts and their maintenance suggestions, the top of this actuator was letting in water, which was corroding the gears and the drive mechanism and causing it to fail. These are approximately $4,000 to replace, and replacing 51 of them just was not something that we wanted to do, obviously. So we came up, one of our contractors came up with a revised plan and a special way to protect these from water intrusion during the winter. And all of the trackers are being outfitted with that, and the few damaged ones are now being repaired. Slide. We're now getting much better uptime, much more consistent tracking, and the trackers are starting to perform as they originally had intended. So we had hoped that this would come about at a much lower expense when we were purchasing the project. But despite the fact that these are one of the most widely used trackers in the solar industry in Ontario, and the manufacturer enjoys a pretty good reputation, we were less than impressed with what we found, and we've had to really take the bull by the horns to come up with corrective measures on our own. And the SolarShare board has been accommodating and recognizing that the investment we're making is worth it, and we should be earning a payback, on our investment in the coming months and years to come. Slide. Every one of our system has devices called inverters, and inverters take the direct current that is generated by all of our systems and convert it into a current that can be put on the Ontario electrical grid. And it is that current, it is that power, that energy that we are being compensated for. But the conversion of that, it does not come without any headaches or responsibility. Each one of these inverters has to operate correctly. It has to optimize as much as possible in its operation so that we are getting peak performance. And it has to pass on constant production data to our communications system, which then relays it to Bob Ross, who monitors this daily, sometimes twice a day, just to watch out for system problems or system inefficiencies. This has been complicated by the fact that a number of manufacturer inverters, which we are dealing with, have simply packed up and left Canada, and leaving us without warranty coverage and without anybody with deep technical knowledge of these to support us. So we have had to find people who were experts in the field other than the manufacturer who would cooperate with us and work on sophisticated solutions to get these working. In some cases, we've had to swap these out for more modern equipment where we know that they are more solid performers and use the remaining good removed products to use on other sites as backups. And we have backups on every site of every inverter so that if there is a determination that an inverter is defective or not performing, technical staff on site can immediately remove it and replace it with another. There's not a separate trip, there's not a delay, there's not downtime. We take a number of measures like that. Slide. One of the bigger challenges we faced in past years, and I hope I'm touching wood when I say that we seem to have mastered it. This is just a portion of one of our Sundance sites. We have 8 sites like this that are 600 kilowatts DC or 500 kilowatts of power they're allowed to put on the grid at any one time. And there are, I believe, 480 tracker heads on each of these systems. And ensuring that each of them is operating properly, was a lot of moving parts and was a royal headache to maintain the consistency of and keep the uptime good. We've been working on this diligently for years, and I'm pleased to say that with the help of our very adept northern maintenance team, these are operating in pretty good condition, and we're having fairly few problems. However, no system is a set it and forget it. Maintenance is required on all. And for instance, we found that electrical connections, which we should never have to visit again, were in some cases overheating and risking failure. So we've had to purchase infrared cameras so we can do thermal imaging scans of every connection in every system, and so finding a surprising number of issues to have to deal with, and we're dealing with them presently. It's an example of, and no one ever anticipated that there would be that level of maintenance required, but we are being very proactive to fix a problem before it occurs and not have to spend the money and time to fix it afterwards or suffer downtime. And here again, we have switches and relays and so on that sometimes fail, and either nobody in Canada has one, or the manufacturer, doesn't produce them, or there always seems to be some complication. And I think Bob and crew with the technicians in the field and the engineers on our committee have really grappled with this and come out successfully. And I think these projects are demonstrating the success that we've been working toward. Slide. Our vegetation control committee continues to perform nicely. Last I heard, I believe there were 35 or 40 sheep grazing on our systems. It's a symbiotic relationship because they get fed, the farmer earns money, and we not only see double use of the land, but we all have a better vegetation control rather than having to pay somebody to come in with mechanical equipment and do it as well, which would be quite an onerous job. We've done this for many years. We were, as far as I know, one of the first to do it, and it's proven very successful. And the farmer is actually one of our landowner landlords, one of our land hosts. Slide. One of the problems that we're suffering, I mentioned the heavy snow last spring and the amount of lost generation due to forest fires. One of the other climate change effects that we've had is the frequency and intensity of microbursts. This is where there are some very strong winds that are created at ground level in advance of a storm cell, and we have had situations such as this right here, where you see the whole top row of panels on the tracker have literally been blown off the tracker, literally torn off it by wind. These trackers all have wind sensors so that they go flat, or as we say, tabletop, when a strong wind is encountered, but they can't do it instantly. And sometimes the microbursts, the downdrafts that affect these come so quickly that the trackers don't have time to fully tabletop and protect themselves before it happens. we're working now to try to reinforce the panel attachments because the tracker can take a fair bit more strain. But it's another thing where, the trackers were built and inspected just fine, but nobody anticipated that the weather was going to be getting more violent. Of course, our expectations, as you might imagine, are that it is going to continue to get more violent. And we are working on changes to our system to accommodate that. Trackers were not the only fatality of microbursts. Slide.
Before you move on, Mike, do you mind telling us how long does it take for the panels to tabletop roughly? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I've seen them do it, and I would estimate that it's about 2 minutes. Bob might have a better idea. I think these take about 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Slide, Chris. Here are the panels torn off which we found in the grass. Most of them damaged enough not to be able to be reused. So we not only have to get replacement panels, get the contractor out there to work on it with a cherry picker and look at methods to reinforce them, which is what we're now going to be doing to all trackers. Slide. Rooftop systems have only suffered in one case. This is our Vanastra project, which is up sort of in the Goderich direction. The panels in the foreground have been torn and slid around, torn from their mountings and slid around. You can see panels in the center and in the distance that have been upturned and thrown across the top of the other panels. This system and other rooftop systems are weighted down with ballast blocks, and they're rated for pretty high wind levels, but it just wasn't enough here. The wind exceeded that. And what we're going to be doing, the repairs are underway, they're almost complete. And besides using weights, we're going to do something because this is actually a concrete roof, which is rather unusual. We're actually going to be lag bolting the outer 3 rows of panels to the roof, in addition to the weights to try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We can't do that in all roofs. Roof penetrations cause leaks. Landlords don't like that, and so we're not able to. But we are, we are aware of the fact that this is a risk that we face, and we have to pay attention to it because things are going to get worse, not better. Slide. I don't have too much further to go. That's it right there. I've just tried to, I haven't gone into all of the technical issues that we're dealing with, but I've just tried to give you sort of a taste of some of those that have been bigger issues involving more thought. And if anybody has questions, Chris, I'm not sure if we have time for a few or we should move on with Ashley's report.
We're running a couple of minutes late here, but we did answer some questions during your talk, and you helped us answer one live. Any other questions you can see, Bob?
No, not
Okay.
right now.
Okay, great. Well then, thank you so much, Mike. And I'm pleased to introduce Ashley Reed, who is going to help us through our 2023 financial statements. Ashley, take it away.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Chris. Maybe slide. Perfect. So these are our assets on our balance sheet. As you can see, the total cash held year over year is slightly lower. That's just due to the issuance of our bonds and timing of the offering statement. You'll also maybe notice that the parts inventory that we opened a couple of years ago, that's shrunk a little bit. That's just due to the inverters that we have, one of the inverters that we were holding. Slide. And if we're looking at our liabilities, you can see that the total solar bonds that were issued to members closed the year at 30 million, whereas we were at 34 million the year before. So our total debt and liabilities year over year is down and continues to decline. Slide. As Mike was saying, our revenue generation is a little bit lower year over year. We closed out, we were down 215,000 just due to lower sun, the smoke, and some system downtime. But if you're looking through the expenses, you'll see that our operations and expenses, while they were up year over year, our total expenses were virtually unchanged at 418, sorry. Year over year. So I think are there any questions? I know Doug's going to go ahead into the finance piece after this. If there's no questions on this.
I don't see any questions. Any questions on the 2023 financial statements? These are available on the website again at solarbonds/get-involved, solarbonds.ca/get-involved. Apologies. I see one hand up. Oh, that's Mike's hand. Mike,
Yes,
did you?
I just thought it should be mentioned, actually mentioned that the value of bonds has gone down, and that is exactly as according to our long-term modeling, because year over year we are gradually paying off bonds so that we will end up with a zero balance owing to bondholders, toward the very end of our project contracts. So this is a normal thing, and we're expecting it, and we're planning on it, and it's nothing abnormal. Just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Mike. I don't see any other questions. We can always answer questions later too. So not the last chance for that. But
Slide?
I guess, yeah, we'll, sorry, 1 second. There we go.
Okay, so we've been using Creans LaRose as our auditors for the last few years, and the board of directors would like to recommend reappointing them for this coming year.
Great.
So,
yeah, maybe you could make a motion to reappoint Creans LaRose as auditors for the 2024 fiscal year, Ashley.
yes, I move to reappoint Creans LaRose as the auditors for 2024.
Thank you so much. Ron, could you second that for us?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. Any discussion before I launch the poll? I don't see any. I will launch the poll now. And you should see it on your screen. I'll give you a few more seconds. And just 5 more seconds. Okay. And the poll. And I will share the results. And you can see the motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Ashley. I'd like to ask our chair of our finance committee, Doug Finley, to take the stage, the virtual stage, and take us through finance for us. Doug, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My comments are going to kind of connect what Ashley said about our 2023 actuals and what Mike was saying about our long-term model. One of the unique things about SolarShare, of course, is because the business is built on these long-term feed-in tariff contracts. We have this long-term model that is a critical part of how we run the whole business, which is different from a lot of other businesses. Chris, would you go to the next slide, please? So the bars there, the 7.1 million in terms of the 2024 revenue forecast, that's a number that's going to stay relatively steady over the coming years. It'll decline slightly just based on our predicted aging of the solar panels, but absent bringing on new projects, that's a fairly steady number. The interest number in the gray bar is going to decline. And again, that's something Mike remarked on. It's kind of a virtuous cycle in that as we retire bonds, our interest payments go down, which leaves us with more cash flow to retire more bonds. And then come 2038, everything will have been paid off. Expenses will remain fairly steady, although they'll decline slightly as we manage those. One of the things I just want to note in terms of interest, because we've been going through pretty dramatic interest rate fluctuations the last few years, we did make adjustments to the long-term model. We recalibrated every year. Chris Connors and Mary Warner reset the long-term model with the preceding year's actual results, and then we're always looking forward from a renewed baseline. But one of the things that we also did a few years ago was we changed the interest rate assumptions in the model. And as it turned out, at the time, I have to admit, I thought we were probably going a little higher than we needed to on the rates, but it turned out that that's about where we have been issuing. So the long-term model does allow for the rates that we're currently issuing at and that we think will be issuing our bonds over the next year or so. Next slide, please, Chris. You can see that we've got a spike in maturities coming in 2025. As we have proposed in our offering statement that's now in front of BISRA for approval, we've proposed that we would issue bonds of 2, 3, and 5-year maturities. And the goal there is to avoid having another peak like the one you see in 2025, because the problem with a peak like that is it causes a lot of stress in that particular year when suddenly we have to issue a lot of bonds. We've been successful at doing it. You look back at 2020, we sold a bunch of bonds then, but it's just something we'd rather not have to do. So we're gonna manage those maturities to avoid a peak like that. In 2023, you see there's a gap between the maturing line and the issued line. And that goes back to something that Ashley remarked on a few minutes ago. We paid off $3.5 million worth of bonds. That's exactly what our plan has called for. Next slide, please. I mentioned that the long-term model gets updated every year to recalibrate it. And that's the actual operating performance that we mentioned there. We'd love to add new assets if the environment would allow it. Right now, given the interest rates out there, given the what we get paid for energy that's generated, we just can't make the models work to add new projects. We're hoping that things might change and that we could start looking at new projects again. But right now, it's very much a steady state with the current projects we have underway, managing the bond rates that we pay, controlling expenses carefully, and of course, the tremendous work that Mike and the operations team do to keep the panels generating at a very, very high, or I should say a very low downtime percentage, a very high production rate. And those are the remarks that I wanted to make.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. Any questions for Doug on any of the finance topics? Again, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, should you wish. Okay, I don't see any. Bob, sorry, Bob. Thanks so much, Doug. We'll move on to our next section. Okay, so we're now to the election of directors to the board. There are 3 director positions open, each for a term of 3 years. We have 3 nominees. I'm very pleased that our 3 of our existing board members have agreed to run again for election this time around. Those are Glen Campbell, Patrick Collie, and Doug Finley. We are a member-based organization. Others may nominate themselves as well. If you want to nominate yourself, then please do so at this time. And otherwise, we'll move ahead with the election. Okay, great. So what I'll do is I'll ask Glen to speak for a minute first, and followed by Patrick, and followed by Doug. Glen, would you please go ahead?
Thanks very much, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Okay,
great. So again, my name's Glen Campbell. This will be my third term on the board. I'm retired. I work part-time as an investor and consultant. My was in capital markets. So the value added, as it were, that I bring to the board is mostly on the capital markets and finance side. I sit on the finance committee, as well as being on the main board, where I've served as chair through my last term. So I'm really pleased to see how the boards have worked well through easier times and not so easy times, solving problems and creating what I think is a tightly run organization. Very happy we brought it to this point, and looking forward to the next 3 years.
Great. Thank you so much, Glen. I am going to ask Patrick Collie to speak now for a minute.
Sounds good. Can you hear me?
We got you. Yeah.
All right. So last month marked about a pretty good anniversary for me, 10 years in the renewable industry. And so for the last 6, I've been on the SolarShare board with this lovely bunch of folks. And in that time, Ontario's solar industry has changed a lot. When I first started, we were building the last round of Fit Ones. And since then, most of my business has been in the US, unfortunately. Where I am now is Algonquin Power. And so I get to see a lot of the comings and goings of the market in Ontario and elsewhere. And being in renewables and developing projects is what I add to the board. And I do that on the new business committee. And I'm hopeful, and some of the things I'm seeing in the Ontario market should mean some more opportunities for SolarShare in the next few years. And I'd like to be a part of that, if you'll have me.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And finally, I'm going to ask Doug Finley, who we just heard on finance, speak for a minute.
Hi, like Glen, I'm retired now, but I was formerly the president of a company that built the tax software that those of you who have accountants and lawyers probably use. So I've got lots of experience with strategic planning and investment decisions and working with governments. My wife and I installed solar panels on our rural property about 12 years ago, so through FIT. So I've also got direct experience with the highs and lows of sunny days and broken trackers. I've been the chairman of the finance committee for the past 3 years, and have enjoyed working with Chris and Mary and the other members of that committee, as well as the board. And of course, I'm pretty familiar with the long-term model that guides so much of what we do. I really believe in the SolarShare mission of democratizing green energy, and I hope I can continue contributing to that.
Thank you so much, Doug. Great. So I think we're ready to make a motion to conduct an election poll. Grayzanne, would you be able to make that motion?
I so move.
Thank you. And Peter, would you be able to second that motion?
Yes, I second it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any discussion before we launch that poll? Okay, I'm going to now launch the poll. And please select 1, 2, 3, or none of the candidates to be elected to the board. Give everyone a few more seconds. Great. I will now end the poll. And I'll share the results. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations to Glenn, Patrick, and Doug. Thank you very much for your continued support and work for SolarShare. We really appreciate it. Wonderful. So moving right along, I'd like to invite Patrick to speak to new business. And we do have a couple of questions from the Q&A that I'll prompt Patrick to speak to a little bit when he speaks.
Great, thanks. You can go to the first slide. So as I alluded to, there are a number of things happening in Ontario. The government has responded to a growing electricity demand that had been flat for years, as well as retirements or refurbishments of existing generators that you've probably heard about. So those are eloquently named the ELT1, LT1, and LT2, because what else would they be called? These procurements, unfortunately for SolarShare, are, I guess, lacking carve-outs that we saw during the FIT contract era for either small project sizes or community ownership. So those two things are some of what allowed SolarShare to get involved in the FIT era. These procurements are much larger, and the vast majority of the contracts awarded under these procurements are going to go to people who can stand up 100 to 400 megawatt projects with all of the capital raising and other fun stuff that goes along with that size of project. We have pursued some development partnerships where we could bring land to the table at some of our existing projects. One of those still has legs and may result in some participation in an LT2 project, but we're not betting the farm on that. Another thing that's happening in the Ontario market is some people, if you're involved in the FIT industry, may have heard of a court ruling that allows for people to add DC capacity to their FIT 1 contracts, and because the rate FIT 1s were at, that's fairly lucrative. SolarShare's a risk-averse organization, and we're not likely to pursue this because it's likely to be stuck in the courts for a while, with the ISO likely to appeal. The other traditional stream of new business for us has been acquisitions of existing operating FIT projects. And they do come across our desks from time to time, but at this stage, there's been so much consolidation in the industry that most things are either owned by a small handful of players or have so much hair on them you wouldn't want to touch them. And so that has really slowed things down. But we'll go to the next slide where I have more sunshine and rainbows, because that was all doom and gloom.
That's right. Now, before we move ahead, we do have a question. How much capital would you say is needed for there's a range, 100 megawatt or a 400 megawatt project? I think you referred to that. Can you give us a sense?
Solar projects in the US at that scale are typically just multiply that number by 1.5, 1.2 to 1.5, and that's so 150 to 600 million USD.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, sunshine and rainbows. So the good news on the Ontario renewable front is there has been some legislation announced with a May 2025 timeline that will allow what we've been pushing for a while, which is virtual net metering in the form of PPAs. So that would allow any customer located anywhere to buy energy from any generator located somewhere completely different and only connected via the distribution and transmission grid to sell power to one another. I think this is a great fit for SolarShare because it naturally gives us the size limitation that we're missing on those larger procurements, because you won't have players who are deploying $150 million to $600 million going after a 500 kilowatt deal with a medium-sized business. So that naturally has some sort of size tranche carve out for a company like SolarShare. So we'll wait and see what the final rules are on this, but we do have some irons in the fire.
And those are likely to occur, like there's going to be more action on that next spring, summer, I think. Is that right?
The timing they put out for the actual law to go into effect is May of 2025. And so between now and then, they should hopefully give us more information.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing, so not only are companies able to take advantage of this, but municipalities would fall under the same bucket. They could take advantage of this or own projects directly, and we could act as a financier and operator for those municipalities. And so that's our call to action for the members: is if you are involved or you know people who are involved with your local government and you think it'd be a good fit, please reach out to us and get involved. And that's all I have, I think. I have questions though, don't I, Chris?
Yeah, there was a couple. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So if I may, one question we have is, since FIT contracts are no longer being issued, would you move to a wholesale model? I think we've kind of answered that, but do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so how do I, it's difficult in Ontario to access the wholesale market from a distribution connection. And at the size level we're at, sort of some of the regulatory and other registration, monitoring, market participation things that you would have to do just to get access to that market are probably cost prohibitive for our size of projects, because the rates are nowhere near what you would see from the FIT contracts. That is probably on the table for end of life FIT projects where anything is better than zero, but not really a business opportunity for our size, which is why I spoke about the other, the virtual net metering, where corporate customers can access our power directly and you don't have to go through the wholesale market.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. We do have another question. And it's more of a general question. Are there any additional assets being investigated? So we talked about some of, looking at more FIT contracts that exist. We talked about perhaps developing new projects via virtual net metering. We talked about batteries under the LT1 procurement that the ISO is running. Are there any other additional assets that you wanted to comment on there?
I think the only other one would be that we have thought about repowering, and we've thought about end of life of FIT assets, and both of those things sort of roll together. So under those procurements, the ISO is developing rules to allow repowered projects to obtain new contracts. That won't happen for us until our FIT contracts start expiring in 2031, but it is something we're keeping an eye on.
Great. Thank you very much. One final question for you here, or maybe two, actually. My apologies. Given commercial retrofit cladding for energy efficiency, are there any opportunities for SolarShare in the building integrated photovoltaic space?
I know nothing about building integrated photovoltaics. I'm glad I was able to say it out loud. Um, so I'm going to say maybe, but I don't know about them.
Okay, Glenn, I see your hand up. Did you want to say something? Oh, sorry, just wait, let me unmute you here.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment for the benefit of our members. I mean, I think you probably share my view that there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience on the sector and on the opportunities that we face. But it's also worth adding a little bit about the focus and the discipline that SolarShare brings to these acquisition opportunities. We are always looking at these opportunities through a bondholder lens. In other words, will an opportunity, will a project enhance or at least maintain the security of our bondholders' positions? Does the risk profile line up with what we want for an organization that's debt financed? So there's that. And then the second element, and I think this came through nicely in Patrick's comments, is that we focus on what we're good at. If something's really better suited for a bigger organization, we're inclined to leave it to them. We really focus on opportunities that are well suited for the skills and the size that we have. So, I mean, those principles have guided all of our, discussions around potential acquisitions, and I think it's a real hallmark to the discipline that the staff and the board have brought to this.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Those are really helpful comments. So if I may add on the building integrated, building integrated photovoltaics are still relatively new and challenging to integrate. So I think if there were opportunities for SolarShare to do that within our model, then sure. But it's not something that changes the game for us in that sense. We do have one other question. Do we have existing relationships with counterparties for a virtual power purchase agreement? We do have existing relationships, and we are exploring those relationships and seeing if we can set up a power purchase agreement with a counterparty that would work well with SolarShare. So yes, but we always appreciate learning about other counterparties that may want to work with us. So please, if you have someone like that, an organization like that, then we're all ears. I don't see any other questions. Let me thank you very much, Patrick. And I'm pleased to introduce Peter de Koning, who is going to speak to our sales and marketing. Peter, please take it away.
Great. Yes, well, good evening, everyone. Maybe can you advance the slide there, Chris? Yeah. So this is an overview of our membership in solar bond sales over time. So what you'll see, we have two axes here, a left and a right axes. And the gray shaded bars are historical sales. That's the volume of sales that bond sales we've had year on year. And then the orange shaded bars are forecasts of what we project to need to sell going forward. You will see Doug mentioned this in his remarks that there's kind of an echo effect here. So in 2020, there's bonds that will renew in 2025, 5-year bonds that will renew. And you can see that there's a large spike that stands out above the neighboring bars. And that puts a meaningful administrative load on the organization to do that. And that's one of the things we've broken with a little bit in the SolarShare branding of the 5-year bond is to offer other terms to try and level out those peaks and not have this recurring echo effect when bonds mature, that we have a surge of new bonds that we have to sell. As it relates to 2024, I'll speak about this in the next slide a little bit, but we've sold, I think, just shy of about $500,000 of bonds up to the end of April, when our last offering statement terminated. And we're currently awaiting receipt from FSRA of our next offering statement, and that we expect that to open up soon. And then under that new offering statement, we will be able to sell bonds again for the remainder of the year. The other piece of data on this chart is the membership numbers, and that's the blue line that you see. And so we're sitting in around 2,250 members as part of SolarShare. Next slide. So what we did last year, so when we raised 2.4 million in 2023, interest payments have recently been sent out. So in June, we pay out interest twice a year, June and I guess end of December. So those interest payments should have gone out just recently. In aggregate, we've paid about $13 million in interest payments. I didn't mention it, but if you were to tally up all of those bars in the previous slide, I think it rings out around $80 million of bonds that we've sold over the history. Looking forward, 2022 solar bond offering. So this is what we anticipate offering when the offering statement is received from FSRA. So we have a 2-year term at 4.5% interest, a 3-year term at 5% interest, and a 5-year term at 4% interest. This has been debated quite a bit between the finance committee and the marketing committee, but what we've tried to do there is offer a competitive interest rate relative to what we see in the market, and also we don't perfectly have a crystal ball, but where we think interest rates will go in the future, and then also to try and shape shift the peaks of the maturities, and that's how we've arrived at those offerings. Next slide. So some of the things that we've done here is kind of an education piece, is we've offered some webinars. This is something we started, I guess, during the pandemic when we weren't able to meet in person as much. So you can, if you scan that QR code, it will take you to a landing page on our website, and you can review these webinars. They've been recorded and you can review them. A sort of call to action here is that we'd like to do more of these going forward. So if you have requests of what you would like to see as a webinar, then we would you can direct those to Chris, those ideas to Chris, and we'll look at putting together webinars on other topics of interest to the members. Next slide. So some of the organizations we work with, there's a few themes here. Really, like there's the renewable power kind of theme to these other organizations, and the co-op community component to this. So some of the organizations like CanREA, like these are promoting wind and solar and energy storage in general. And then the community co-ops, these are organizations that are trying to promote the community cooperative business model. We also have, so Tapestry and Relay, these are companion kind of organizations that have come through Trek as SolarShare had its origins. And they have, Relay has an education component where they try to educate sort of the young people and the public at large on renewable power. And Tapestry helps with some of our administrative aspects of what we run, which run SolarShare. Of interest here, there's the Cooperative Young Leaders Summer Camp, and that's something SolarShare, we provide a grant or a sponsorship to that. This is a summer camp for people who want to get involved in cooperative organizations, and so we sponsor or provide some funds to sponsor somebody attending that camp.
And there
Next.
are still places open. So I talked to the administrator. So there are some places, it's for 13 to 18-year-olds in case you have 13 to 18-year-olds in your life.
Okay, great. Next slide, Chris. Some of the events and media events that we've participated in, there's some QR codes here. You can snap those and it'll take you to those links. So the good investing, there's a recording there that you can review. There's some media mentions where SolarShare and Chris have been quoted in these media mentions, the Toronto Star article. Just note the Toronto Star article, like if you're not a subscriber to the Toronto Star, you basically just be able to read the heading of that. You won't be able to read the whole article. They have a paywall in front of that. I think you can click on those links and see. Oh, I see a question here. Is there an alternate way to find those articles other than the QR code? I think you could, if you photograph this page, you could probably just do a Google search, Toronto Star Solar Panels, Rogers Center. You'll find the article that way.
Yeah, I think
Do you
that's
have other
probably the best thing
suggestions,
to do.
Chris? Like we could have put a good old
If you can
fashioned
Google
link
it, or
in there as
maybe
well.
Marina, maybe you could put the links if you can find them in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, maybe somebody can help us with that and paste them into the chat, and then you can paste them. Okay, next slide. Okay, some upcoming events. So, we're not living in the pandemic anymore, so we're starting to get back out to the farmers markets. Here's some dates of some farmers markets we're going to attend. Some of them are during the week, and there is one on a Saturday. We have a few other planned events. So there's one with Relay Education. We don't have the date announced here, but this will be something perhaps at a city park, and this will be something that Relay will bring some of their education kits out. So they have projects where you can build a solar car and a windmill and some sort of hands-on STEM type activities. We were planning to have a site visit in June. That is, unfortunately, we've had some equipment down, and that site is we can't go to that site. So we're going to try and reschedule that for the fall. So we'll send that out in our newsletter when we've got that sorted and locked down. And I think that was the last slide, I think, wasn't it, Chris?
Yes, I believe it was, Peter.
Yeah.
Any questions? I do see we're going to share the link for Cooperative Young Leaders in the chat. Any other questions for Peter? My apologies about the site visit. We will schedule something where there's construction there, so we're going to figure that out, and we'll let you all know when that's happening. Great, thanks, Marina. Any other questions? Okay. Great, thank you very much. So I think that's it for our AGM. We do have time after this to have more questions should you wish. But at this point, we can terminate the meeting, and we'll stick around for a bit. And if you have questions, we're happy to answer them. But what I'd like to do is now ask for a motion to terminate this meeting. Mike, would you be able to make that motion?
I so move, Chris.
And Doug, would you be able to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you so much. Any discussion before I launch that poll? Okay, I'm going to launch the poll. And you should see it on your screen. Great, and thank you, Marina, for putting those links in the chat for the media. And I'll add the Cooperative Young Leaders as well to that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. and share the results. So everyone's okay with us ending the meeting? Great, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So what I'd like to do now, we did have, if you recall, we had our contest, our quiz. Marina, can you, do we have a winner, or do we have at this time?
Sorry, yeah. So the winner is, drum roll, please. Newton Chan came in first, and then we have somebody for a runner-up. We've got somebody who put their name in as Abe. Is that Abraham Lau that's on here?
If you want, Abraham, if that's you, let us know.
Yes, we've got a yes
Wonderful.
in the chat. Great.
Way
So
to
we'll send
go.
you
Congratulations.
we'll send you your prizes.
We hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much, Marina. Congratulations. And yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad you, I hope you had fun with that. Yes, Bob, there will be, we can post the meeting to the website. That's not a problem. And I'll put the link to the Canadian Cooperative Young Leaders. Any other questions before we're done? Here, Bob, do you see any questions that we can answer?
Just the last one. How did we do against ice and snow over the past winter? Less and more. We had a lot less snow, especially in our Temiskaming sites. So
Yeah, a lot less snow up north this year.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was a mild winter, wasn't it? Very mild winter. I guess that was a lot of places. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending our meeting. We really appreciate it. You can always reach us, invest@solarbonds.ca, or you can reach me directly at chris@solarbonds.ca. We'd love to hear from our members. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or want to chat with us. We do really appreciate your participation in our annual general meeting. And congratulations again to the recently elected board members. Thank you again for your participation, and have a great evening. Thanks, everyone.